Ahoy! New World database has been updated for open beta, and we can talk about the pathway to 725 gear score. It is very confusing. There are a lot of kind of obstacles to fully understand the system. I'm going to make this as simple as possible in the order that makes the most sense to me, but it's going to get somewhat convoluted towards the end. That's just because of how they made it. We're going to talk first about the Sandworm, because the Sandworm is kind of a pathway to 725, because they have upgraded the rewards here. So you can see those are now 710. That in itself is already pretty solid, and they have a lot of weird illegal perk combinations as well, which sometimes can be quite interesting. So for example, you have a chess piece here with Keen and all kinds of stuff like that. That will probably not actually work. That'll probably just be armor perks that are disabled, or they will fix it up, whichever. But those armor pieces drop at 610, and they can be upgraded, and the weapons too. As you can see here, there's a recipe here to upgrade them. We'll get back to the Gorgon's Eye later on. But you can see, other than that, relatively easy recipe with 1 weapon matrix here, 3 chromatic seals. That is doable, at least. And this then upgrades into a 625 item. You see it as 610 displayed here, I'm not sure why, but it is actually, if you look at it here, 725 once again. And you can see that you have 2 perks locked. I am not entirely sure if you can use a perk mod, but I think so, which means you could actually get some fairly decent pieces out of this already. Some of them have solid perk combinations. Get some pretty good gear that's not going to be too expensive to craft, with the exception of these Gorgon eyes here, but you will probably have a few spare ones of those anyways later on. So this might be an interesting pathway. Sandworm might be viable. Next we have the PvP pathway. What you need to know for that is that you might need some mystic doubloons along the way. They are used for a variety of things, and I will talk about that more in a separate video about the whole PvP thing in detail. What we're going to focus on here is the ones that you make with the Goldcursed Coconut, which will still require mystic doubloons, but it's kind of like the main piece. If you don't have the Goldcursed Coconut, you can't make any of the particularly important things here. One thing we can do is artifact upgrading. So as you can see, we can see this, for example, here with the Phoenix artifact. By clicking on this, this upgrades it to 725 and effectively increases the stats. I'm sure you can add the craft mod on that as well, so you can choose the last perk. You need a jewelry matrix in this case. You need 600 dark matter, 5 gypsum orb, 1 chromatic seal, so relatively cheap. Once again, this is just a small upgrade after all. And then you can choose the Goldcursed Coconut from PvP or the Gorgonite Inductor from PvE, which we'll get to in a bit. Other than that, it is worth noting that you don't need any jewel crafting skill for this, for example, so this is just done as a gypsum kiln as usual. And I'm assuming, because it doesn't really say anything other than Phoenix artifact, that you might be able to upgrade just from having the artifact itself and not need to do the first upgrade before that, but also not sure about that. Possible, but not necessarily the case. So yeah, I'm not going to upgrade any artifacts until this is out, to see if I can possibly skip one step there. Then, once that's out of the way, there is something else you can get with the Goldcursed Coconut, which are these Goldcursed crates. There's a variety of them. You can see here, it's like a full set of trinkets, like magic weapons, melee weapons, and so on. We'll just look at one here in particular. So that's a couple, nearly 2,000 doubloons, and then the Goldcursed Coconut. And the possible rewards here are some 725 items that have random perks, which are the same visuals as the named ones, by the way. Could be interesting. And then you have a chance to get these legendary pieces. The legendary pieces here all come with Penetrating the Empowered, new perk. We'll talk about that in a separate video as well. And I think all with Keen as well, which is not necessarily ideal. Okay, the spear actually is vicious, so the spear is pretty nice. And these ones can then be upgraded. So they're at 725, but since they just come in this chest, they would come with a random perk here, with a random perk slot. So we can also use a Goldcursed Coconut to upgrade those exact same pieces. As you can see here, so there's the same items here once again. And if we look at that, then this is just a recipe with more doubloons, with more Goldcursed Coconut, Dark Matter, where you're crafting an item, even though you have an item. I don't know why this is labeled as artifact. This is actually not an artifact, it's just a named item, but I guess it's just considered artifact crafting. It's crafted at the Well of Fortune, which is the PvP shop, basically, the free-for-all PvP zone shop. So it is another way to get 725, but a relatively tedious one, because you need to roll those chests first, and then you have to get lucky and get your item, and then you need to spend another Goldcursed Coconut to actually get the last perk on it that you want. So not going to be that easy. The Goldcursed Coconut is going to have a 7-day limit expiration, so you get this once per week. So it is somewhat time gated, and so are some other things in the new PvP zone and the free-for-all zone. Again, we'll talk about that in a separate video. If you're interested in that separate video and you haven't yet, consider subscribing and clicking the bell and get notified of that. And if you want early trading tips for the next patch, then feel free to support me on Patreon, where I've posted one of those a bit earlier this week. Now we're moving on to the PvE crafting, because this is what you get out of PvP crafting. You're not gonna get everything you want in terms of perks and combinations. You kind of have that, like, whatever is available in terms of artifacts and items. But in PvE, we have more options. So the first thing you'll see here is the Hoplite earring, which is one of the new sets, the Hoplite set. You can see this has 2 perks locked and then a random 3rd perk. In this case, that, for example, drops from Echidna. This is one of the new raid bosses. And then you have the Gorgons set, which is also 725, but comes with random perks. Both of these are buy no pickup. Both of these are just things you can get in the raid. And the Gorgon's weapon here comes from Broodmother Medusa. And what you can see here is that actually both of the sets will come from all of the enemies, all of the bosses in this raid. But each boss has something different assigned in terms of which items they are. So for Echidna here, that is the Hoplite jewelry and the Gorgon's jewelry, so all the jewelry. For Typhon, that is the armor pieces. We have the Hoplite greaves here, and then we have the Gorgon's gauntlets, for example. And then for Broodmother Medusa, for the final boss, you have all the shields and all the weapons, again, Hoplite and Gorgons. So that's the drop aspect of things. But on top of that, there are other things that drop in this raid. You have the Hive of the Gorgon's token. It says quantity 10 here. I'm not sure if this is 10 per something or just 10 per entire raid. It sounds like it may just be per entire raid, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. Don't quote me on that one. This one is just one that I haven't looked into further. You get apparently 3 chromatic seals. You get 1 Gorgonite Inductor, and this is 1 per week. This is the same cooldown as the Goldcursed Coconut. And you get Gorgon's Eye, and you get 4 of those, if I'm getting my information right. Thanks to the guys on New World Database Discord for that one. I think it was Mixologic who looked into that. And yeah, that is kind of the primary resource you are going to get and you're going to use for multiple things. So, Hive of the Gorgon's token is... the closest thing to it would be materia. I'm not sure why they didn't just make it materia, I guess, but you can see here that these are just Hive of the Gorgons named replicas, and all you can do with this is make Hoplite gear. Any kind of Hoplite gear can be crafted with this token. You cannot use craft mods, so it's effectively still a random roll, but with the Hoplite gear you at least have 2 perks locked. So for example here, you would have Health and Enchanted Ward locked, and then you're rolling for a 3rd random perk. Not too bad, honestly, depending on the frequency with which you can get these coins. Next, we have the Gorgon's Eye. Gorgon's Eye is, first of all, a little bit confusing, because you're seeing items here that are with a schematic called Gorgonite, but they're actually not. They're actually all Gorgon's pieces. I think the fact that this is named Gorgonite at all is a mistake, makes things more confusing, and probably shows how confused they were with the Gorgonite and Gorgon themselves. So these schematics just produce Gorgon's pieces rather, and not Gorgonite pieces. Gorgonite pieces are a separate thing. Along with that, Gorgon's eyes are also used to upgrade certain things. So you can see that, for example, if I have a Hoplite earring and I want to change the last perk on that, then this would be the way to do it. Use a Gorgon Eye Gorgon's Eye, and then 3 chromatic seals, and your dark matter and everything. So you can effectively, eventually, get your perks on that in multiple steps as well, as far as I can tell at least. Just a little bit more complicated, and I think you would be able to also just use any of the drops that you get from the dungeon here. So the Hoplite piece doesn't have to be a crafted one, it could also be one that's dropped from the raid, and then you could just upgrade that as well, I think, as far as I understand it. But anyways, other than the Hoplite pieces, and for some reason also again the Sandworm pieces, all of the sand line and everything, which also use these eyes, you also have these Gorgon pieces. And if we look at the Gorgon's pieces here, then it doesn't seem like we can put multiple craft mods on them, so I think maybe one. It doesn't say no craft mod, so I'm assuming it's just a traditional one craft mod. You can use a relatively low amount of resources. You see that's just 6 times the ingots here, and then 6 leathers, 2 cloth. So not super expensive, and 1 Gorgon's Eye. And you craft a Gorgon's piece, and the Gorgon's piece is 725. Again, I think you can have 1 perk here, and this is bind on equip, so this is sellable. Now, there's one thing that is notable about this. First of all, it's one of the few ones that actually uses your crafting skills. You actually have to have the right armoring skill for this. And you need a schematic. The schematic drops from the raid as well, but there are schematics for every single different piece, so obviously some are going to be in more demand than others. I'm sure the certain weapon schematics will be in more demand than heavy armor pieces, for example. So, schematics drop from the raid, not bound. Gorgon's Eyes drop from the raid, not bound. You can sell these directly, you can sell these directly, or you can sell the product. This is where, as a crafter, your money is in, but it still means you have to do the raid. Otherwise, you won't be crafting. So yeah, not that profitable. It's also interesting. It's locked 725 here, but here it shows 590. But I'm pretty sure it should be locked 725 if you have all maxed. Otherwise, it would be very weird. So that's what you can get for the Gorgon's Eye alone. But the Gorgon's Eye alone is not all you can do with this, because there's also a recipe here for Gorgon Essence. And this is where we're getting into the high tier crafting area, I would say. So, first we need to look at the Gorgonite Inductor. The Gorgonite Inductor is, again, kind of the counterpart to the Goldcursed Coconut, but from PvE, from the raid, which also allows you to upgrade any artifact. Same thing here, either coconut or this will be usable. I would probably prefer using my coconuts for this, because the coconut seems to have a few less uses in total, and then use the Gorgonite Inductor somewhere else, because this is also used in the Gorgon Essence. The Gorgon Essence is what we're really looking at here. This is what we're going to go to. Requires 1 Gorgon Eye, or Gorgon's Eye, which means you're going to have spares, right? Because this has a weekly cooldown, so you have 3 of those left if you complete the whole raid, which you're probably going to use on other gear, on either the random crafts or the Sandworm Gear or whatever. But yeah, there's a few purposes for that. You use some Aqua Rager for that, but they're just relatively easy to get resources here. They're going to be in a bit more demand, but nothing crazy here. And we have all that. And we can finally get to the actual pieces that can be crafted from that, which are the real Gorgonite pieces, because here you can see the recipe matches with the crafted item name. It is called Gorgonite in both cases, and in this case you don't need any schematics to craft things. You can just craft them outright. You need, or you can use up to 3 craft mods, so you better be using 3 craft mods. But you can also see that there's a pretty hefty resource price tag here. Quite a few prismatics, couple, like 200 plus total, and also an Emma Matrix and a prismatic scarab as well. So these are like the new high tier prismatic crafts with the Gorgon Essence instead of a SLOTH Inductor, and that gives us the Gorgonite breastplate, 725, and you can choose all of the perks. A lot of these pieces, you may have noticed, have Magnify, and it seems like you may not be able to change that, because At least here it's not indicated. Maybe it can be changed, I'm not sure. But it seems to generally be focused on Magnify. The weapons in particular do not have Magnify because they're always whatever attribute is best for the weapon, quote unquote best. So for example, you'll have a strength on a great axe, something that the weapon scales well with. As such, you will not purely be Magnify if you do all this, but you will have a lot of Magnify if you run full sets of these. So that could be a problem for certain build combinations. All in all, plenty of different pathways to get gear. Now finding out which one of them are actually good pieces and upgrade into something good is a completely different story. And again, there is a lot more, especially to the PvP side of things, the PvP shop. There are a lot more rewards worth talking about, so we'll do that in a future video. If you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. In the next days, we'll actually have the beta going, so I might stream that a little bit. If you're interested, then feel free to follow me on Twitch TV/DukeSloth. I might just do a character to level 30 or something. Just have a look, check things out, maybe play some Deadlock afterwards. Either way, feel free to stop by. Other than that, thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. DukeSloth, out.